Hey friend, I am Ryan Coral, host of the show and the one responsible for building this community of filmmakers and freelancers that are looking to grow their video business. I'm not here to teach you better shooting or editing techniques. Can you edit that out? Maybe not. But I am here to help you in all other aspects of your business. Thank you so much for being here. This episode, you guys, for real, Amina Moreau from Muse Storytelling and Stillmotion is my guest, and she seriously killed it. She slayed the dragon, if there was a dragon. Big takeaways from this episode include the power of empowering others. Also, one of my favorite lines from Amina is, sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. Also, how creating a director's cut can change your entire business for the better. And we talk about using storytelling to make an impact in the world. No big deal. Amongst a lot of other good stuff. So lots of really good nuggets in this episode. Before we get into it, I just want to say thank you. We are literally teetering on 100 reviews for this podcast. That is amazing. And did you know this show is ranked 181 in the United States in the business and entrepreneur category? That's pretty good. 100 in Finland, and we are ranked number 31, or we're ranked 31st, I don't know, however you say that, in Singapore. Who knew people in Singapore listen to this show? But if you are listening and you're from Singapore or Finland or the United States or any other country in the world, I see you. And seriously, you are amazing. Thank you for the love that you're showing by listening to the show, reviewing the show, reaching out saying, we like the show. Remember, if you do like the show and you haven't left a review, you too can leave a review. Super easy. Could you be the 100th? I don't know. Maybe you could be the 100th review. It could be you. That would be amazing. StudioSherpas.com/iTunes will take you right to the iTunes store where you can do that. Now on to the interview. Specializing in the psychology of storytelling, Amina Moreau is the co-founder of 5-time Emmy Award-winning Stillmotion and part of the Muse Storytelling team. Ladies and gentlemen, Amina Moreau. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Storyblocks. Head to storyblocks.com/studiosherpas to learn more about Storyblocks video. What's up, friends? Hey, today I am with Amina Moreau, who is co-founder of Stillmotion. She is winner of multiple Emmys and incredibly gifted at the craft of filmmaking. Super honored to have her here, and she has really cool glasses. And that awesome things about you. Amina, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's funny about the glasses because I think one of the topics that I was really excited to talk to you about today is like telling your own story as a filmmaker. And this is a part of the personal brand. And I don't know, when I first bought these glasses, I thought there's no way, they were just too out there. And somehow the more, and I know that you recently did a podcast on this topic about being your true authentic self, and how the more authentically you are, the more you can stand out in the industry. And it's funny that you mentioned the glasses because they've just become kind of a part of what you encounter when you encounter Amina Moreau. And it's just such an interesting thing how your appearance, your website, everything about how you conduct yourself in the world kind of can be translated back to your personal brand. And if your personal brand also has overlap with your business brand, then that's kind of a cool thing, and it can go a long way. So, yeah.
I like that. Well played. Which makes me think, when we first got on here, I'm looking at your background and I'm like, oh, this is books. And then I look at my background, I'm like, all right, pretty boring. I'm like, this makes you look so smart with and so, what it does for me, it makes me look really not smart because I need some books back here. So
it makes you look like you really, really care about great audio.
It's amazing how you're just shifting all of these beliefs that I have about myself.
But you know what? It's something that I really believe in with the Muse storytelling process is the idea of layers of place really representing something about a story. And camera techniques or scene choices or character choices or backdrops or lighting ratios that all are a metaphor for something that you're trying to communicate. And so the books and your background, I actually don't, they're not an accident. It's not an accident that you chose that. I know that because you're a great storyteller. And this is not an accident either, because I do love learning. I do love reading, and there's a reason that, but I mean, I could have chosen a white wall. I could have chosen something outdoorsy and just used a lot of lighting to combat backlit window with bamboo in the background, which is just in the next room. But I think the way that we put ourselves forward as creatives, as entrepreneurs, and as people, they are the covers of our books. And we're told from a very early age that you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but we all do it.
Yeah.
We do it. And so that personal brand, the way that we present ourselves, is important.
Yeah, I love that. There is a, in our culture today, there's so much talk about trying to separate work in our personal lives, and what the heck is the phrase? It's work-life balance, right?
Yeah.
And I think at the heart of that, it's a super healthy thing to consider. But at the same time, I think there's a way, exactly how you're saying, there's a way to infuse those two that's really healthy. And that it isn't like this mindset of like, oh, I need to always be on. I need to always be ready to, like, hand out my business card or talk about my business or whatever. Total segue. I don't know if this is from too much coffee or whatever, but last night my wife had one of those party things where like people sell stuff, like, like
Oh, yeah.
not candles or Tupperware, but like, I don't know, dresses and all this. And so I took the kids away and I came back like later so that they could do their, all that stuff. And I was just laughing because I thought it was just like one vendor like selling these super cute little dresses for little girls and stuff. But there was like multiple people selling different things. And I was like, oh man, I should have totally set up like a Tell Studios, we could tell your story. I should have set up my own little table. Anyway, I am digressing. Like, this is amazing. So my point being, yes, it is, there are subtle things that we can do in our personal lives that really speak into, and I want to have the kind of business, since I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a business owner, and I kind of get to choose what I do. I want to have the kind of business where I can be like just myself in my personal life, and that just feeds into like who I am as a business owner and the kind of work that we do as a business owner. I want to be able to wear a t-shirt at home, and I also want to be able to wear a t-shirt at work and when I'm in a business meeting, and not feel like I'm not representing the brand and who I am. So I think that whole idea of, being your authentic self, it doesn't have to be like, well, I wear a t-shirt at home and I wear a suit at work. And sometimes, like, depending on the industry and the job and whatever, like that just totally makes sense. But to your point, yes and yes.
Yeah. But do you feel like at any point in your career or in your life, you went through a chapter where you weren't quite sure who that was?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And do you think that people out there that are watching this, listening to this right now, are saying, okay, cool, I would love to be able to do that, but I'm still trying to figure out, am I the t-shirt person or am I the suit person? Or could I be both, just depending on the situation? And obviously the wardrobe being just a metaphor for that bigger question, who do I want to be in the world as both a business person and just a person?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, I still sort of, so I say I want to be the t-shirt guy, but then there are some business meetings that we have where I'm like, I can't wear a t-shirt. I have to wear a button down because we're going into like, this kind of building, and there's these kind of, but at the same time, like very quickly in that meeting, I want to make sure that they know at the heart of who I am, I'm the t-shirt guy, right? They made me wear this, and I'm going to make sure that I say something to the effect so that people really get me, because the sooner they can understand who I am at my core, because that's how I built my business. I built my business to try to be a reflection of what I believe, so our core values are built on not just anybody that I hire, but really they come from me. And so it's one of those things that I've had to spend a lot of time. Why are you asking me the questions? This is but I've had to intentionally take time to ask those hard questions of like, who am I?
Yeah.
I mean, 41 years old, and I've asked that at different phases of my life, different major stages of my life. And who do I want to be? Who do I want to not strive, who do I want to, as I grow and mature, like who do I want to become? And how do I want to serve, and who do I want to serve? And so all of those play into like, well, if I want to serve people that are, back when we were trying to do luxury weddings, I was like, well, I probably need to dress a little bit nicer at work and or when I go to networking events. And so there's that mindset. I don't know. What's your answer?
I just did a project. It actually wasn't film, but it was storytelling. And it was with a dentist in Australia who has a really, really cool business model. He has a dentistry clinic in Sydney, but the really cool part about it is that he also has a mobile clinic on wheels that he takes into the outback, into the most remote areas of Australia where people may not have had dental checkups for decades. And that's not because they can't afford it, it's because they're 8 to 10 hours away from any major city that would have dentists. And so he goes and he offers these services. And long story short, because the mouth is like a gateway to health, he's actually maybe even sometimes saving lives just because he's going to these places. And he reached out to me about a year ago saying that he wanted to apply for a grant to fund growth of this concept. And we looked at the way that he was writing grant proposals, and we looked at his website. And the biggest takeaway for me as a storyteller was that the way that he was communicating about what he does was pretty much the exact same as every other dentist in Sydney and almost every other dentist maybe in the world. I didn't look at every dentist website in the world, but I did enough research to see that when you go to these websites, what you're reading is about their services, what they offer. And if you click on any bio about the service provider, and I say that now versus dentists because this is generalizable to all industries, including filmmakers, is that you would click on the bio of this person and you would just read about their credentials. You would read about their educational background, where they went to school, when they graduated, how many degrees they have, where they live. And by the way, in my spare time, I play soccer and I've got a son. Cool. But everybody's saying the exact same thing. And, he's in Australia, so we hopped on Skype. And we had a really deep conversation that lasted no less than 4 hours. He introduced me to his wife. He introduced me to his son. And I kid you not, we built a friendship in a very short amount of time, because it was about not just getting to know his business, but getting to know what makes him the man he is today. So you ask me why I'm asking you the questions when you're supposed to be the interviewer, because it's in my DNA at this point. But, we talked about what he believes. Yeah. And I think Simon Sinek has 2 really great quotes, one of which I can quote verbatim, and that is that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And his website didn't have anything about why. It had a whole bunch of what's. What I do, what you can expect, what services you can buy from me, but didn't have any why. And then the other thing that Simon Sinek talks about is that doing business is not just about finding people who need what you offer, but it's about finding people who believe what you believe. And he talks about Apple and contrasts Apple to other companies like HP and Dell, and the difference is that with Apple, whether you buy Apple products or not, Apple is very clear about what they believe, and their cult following, and even the following that isn't cultish, tends to believe in challenging the status quo, thinking different, not just thinking differently, thinking different, right? They even changed the tagline to be grammatically incorrect to be different. And I think that that's sometimes where we miss up an opportunity as storytellers. We're the plumber with leaky pipes because we don't stop to ask ourselves, how can we differentiate? We know we're different in some way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard to see that different because we live with ourselves day to day, and so we don't see those little things that make us unique. So sometimes it's actually valuable to ask other people, what do you see in me that's different from the rest? Not just as a professional, not just as a creative, but as a person. But sometimes, we also know this inherently, but how often do we make that clear? And I keep going back to the Muse storytelling process because it's so robust in identifying what makes a really great main character in a story. Uniqueness, desire, and complexity, which is a depth to the desire that goes beyond just the surface. And if you think about telling other people's stories in this way, you can identify some really great characters and go on some really deep journeys in those stories, whether they're film or otherwise. But how often do we turn that process in on ourselves? Mm. And it's gonna come out cliche, and I apologize for it, but what if we look at ourselves as the main characters in the plot of our professional journey, of our personal journey? And what makes us unique? What is our biggest drive? What do we want, and why do we want it? And if we can start communicating that more openly, more vulnerably, and vulnerability is a little bit tough sometimes, but it has such great payoffs because then you have a much greater chance of reaching people who believe what you believe. It takes vulnerability to share a belief, and you risk alienating people who don't believe what you believe. But in my opinion, good riddance, because how often do we really want to work with people who have completely different values from us? Mm-hmm. I think we get the most satisfaction from our work when we work with people who align philosophically. Yeah. And so going back to that dentist, we had this conversation, and then we had another one that was another 4 hours or so. And we got to know each other really deeply. But now when you go to his website and you read about, what he offers, it almost doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what he offers. Because at this point, when people contact him, they say, oh, I read your milk story. Your milk story? What's your milk story? Well, when he was 13, he was playing a game of wall ball or some Australian thing, and he knocked his teeth out. He was 13, he knocked his teeth out, and his teacher was quick on her feet enough to go grab some milk, put the teeth in a bowl of milk, and he went straight to the dentist. And they were able to put those teeth back in his mouth. That is his origin story. He was fascinated. And so that's the first thing you see when you go to his website now is this story. And it's really succinct because we know people have short attention spans on the internet. It's really short, but you read that story and it ends with, I've been a dentist at heart ever since. 13 when this happened. Yeah. And so if you read that, and no other dentist has that story, by the way, so it differentiates him right from the beginning. But if you read that story and you don't care, you're not the right fit, and he probably wouldn't really want you as a patient anyway. But if you do read it and you do connect with it, you're going to go and you're going to bring your family. And one of his goals was to have customers for life, to have patients that became a part of his family. And everybody has different goals. But because of that, we have to be really intentional about how we tell our own stories. We can't just keep telling other people's stories. We have to pay attention to how we tell our own. And it's been great for his business too. I keep getting notes from him and screen grabs from comments from people, and he's had to grow his team to reflect and to respond to just how much people are connecting with it. It's not about dental work anymore. It's about a relationship and an experience. Yeah. And I think we can do the same thing as filmmakers. maybe even more so, because what a personal thing it is to tell somebody's story.
Yeah. I love that so much. It makes makes me don't go read my bio. I'm gonna tell you. There's like one fun fact at the very bottom.
Okay.
So good. But yeah, everything that you're saying is like, yes, these are the things that we try to do for our clients, right? We try to get them to think outside of like, we don't need the features and the benefit, like who cares? Like, that's good. Every dentist does the same thing, right? Maybe a little bit different, your tools. And it's the same thing with all these video companies. It just makes me think of, like, especially back in the day, like somebody who on the front of their website or their business card would have like a big, huge broadcast camera. And so there was nothing that differentiated people from each other. It was just a different phone number and a different name.
Mm-hmm.
And if we use our stories, exactly what you're saying, if on your about page, you have your story and somebody doesn't, whether it's in text form or video form or whatever, but somebody doesn't take the time to read it because they don't care about story, well, guess what? They're probably, if you are a filmmaker that cares about story, this is the perfect client. That's not for you, right? You like immediately, like if they're not connecting with the milk story or they don't know that I can talk like Yoda, like they don't care about that stuff. They don't care about the details. So if you're a person that cares about the details for your brand, your business, or your storyteller, and people aren't even like taking the time, they just want the price. They want to know, how soon they can get this thing. Then newsflash, like that's, if you're
Right.
selling your gear on the front page or you're just talking about what school you went to or whatever in your bio, well, guess what? The people that are hiring you, the people that care about that stuff are using that same lens to look at all these other companies. So they're like, well, Ryan went to this school, but this person over here, they went to that school. And I remember an early client meeting. This is back when we were just doing primarily weddings, where I'm sitting down with the mom of the bride, and the groom. And the mom is, the bride and groom are super excited about everything that we're doing. I'm showing them some samples and they're just like fired up. And the mom is asking me all these questions. She's at one point, she's like, she asked me what school I went to. And I'm like, I went to Rochester College. She's like, oh, so you got your film degree there? I'm like, no, I didn't do it. Well, like what credentials do you have? I'm like, you're looking at this work. You just told me that you love what you see here. This is why do I need? I'm like, that was not. So anyway, I say all that to say, like, that stuff doesn't matter, right? The stuff that does matter, if depending on whatever the thing is that you care about and whatever you're trying to sell, like that's what you need to put out there. If you're trying to sell people that, hey, you shoot on a Red Epic, then yeah, put that front and center, and that's going to differentiate yourself from our studio because we don't shoot on a Red Epic. So there you go. You can have that client. But what I do want is the client that says, man, Ryan, we love how open and honest, authentic you are. And like, you seem to care, and like, you're super goofy and whatever. Like that's go. Like, please don't be goofy around, whatever, like everybody else in the office, but like, this is good. This is a good fit. That's the best. Like, that's what you want. You want people to say, like, we get you and we understand you. So if you can explain in a way, whether through your own video or just copy on your website, if you can get people to get you sooner, then you don't have to waste your time later when they're like, oh gosh, you're irreverent, and like that's not what we're looking for.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And I think that if there's one phrase to take away from all this, like one takeaway, is this: it shouldn't be a popularity contest.
Yeah.
And that, you could argue that flies in the face of capitalism, because you're supposed to grow your business, you're supposed to grow your revenues, grow your audience, grow.
Right.
And yes, as an entrepreneur, you do want to grow. And I don't want to get into the, philosophical conversation about capitalism versus other stuff, but I think there are smart ways to grow, and there are ways to grow that end up becoming headaches. And what you're talking about with having the wrong kind of client, that might be the kind of growth that eventually ends up stunting growth in the long run. Whereas if you don't treat it like a popularity contest, and you're okay with the wrong person not even contacting you in the first place, then what that's going to do is leave the opportunity open for the right person to contact you. And now, I mean, if you're just starting out, you might not have the luxury, financially or otherwise, to just turn people away. And I'm not saying that we have to turn people away either. But structuring our communications, website, Vimeo channel, all those things, podcasts, in ways that attract the right people, then ideally you don't ever have to turn anyone away, because it's just the right people coming in a constant stream.
Yeah, I would say that the big struggle that people end up having when especially early on, it is the hardest early on. You're trying to figure out your voice, you're trying to figure out your brand, what you like to do, what you're not good at, like all that stuff. It's super hard. But when you realize that you've got somebody that's calling you or reaching out that seems like they might be interested, what I ended up doing was I was trying to convince people that they should hire us. And that, like, it's the idea of a popularity contest where I'm trying to say the right thing or trying to, explain how I'm at a loss for words. No, I really felt like there have been so many conversations that instead of helping people, I was trying to convince, because I needed sales, right? So I thought, salesperson, what I'm supposed to do is convince people that they should hire us, and here's the reasons why, because like, here's the work, and here's what I care about, and here's the, like, so is that enough? No? Okay, well, let me think. Maybe we can come down on our price. Maybe we can deliver this faster than the other company that you're looking at. And it's like that. At some level, you have to do that. At some point, if there's no money in the bank, there's a feeling of desperation where it's like, I got to do whatever it takes to, like, put money on the table. I don't eat food on the table, money, I don't know, whatever. So when you can be freed of feeling like you have to convince somebody and turn into a guide, right? Think Studio Sherpas. The whole idea here is that we become guides for our clients and potential clients, people that end up not hiring us, if we can help guide them toward us, or like help guide them away from us, saying like, we're not a great fit. We can't do that. That's not who we serve. That's not how we can help you, but we do know somebody that can, and here's who can. And that's way better than trying to convince somebody that shouldn't be talking to you in the first place.
Yep, for sure. And one of the questions that I've gotten quite a bit from filmmakers, especially ones that haven't been in it long enough to have a really robust portfolio, is how can I attract the right clients if I don't have enough of the work that will attract them? And because one of the things that we recommend to people, creatives of all types really, is show the kind of work you want to do more of.
Right.
And I think sometimes we fall into the trap of just putting up on our portfolio all of our most recent work, regardless of whether we want more of that kind of work or not, just because we feel like we need to show that we've got experience. And yes, that helps. Having options up there does help. But if you have work up there that's going to sell the wrong service, that's not helping anymore. That might actually be hurting. And we learned this lesson back when we were shooting primarily weddings too. That, as we got more experience and as we started charging more, we started attracting a different kind of clientele. And we got to a point where we were shooting these really, really big weddings. And among them, there were certain types of people and certain approaches to getting married and celebration that we appreciated more than others. And one of the biggest indicators of whether we were going to enjoy ourselves was how big the bridal party was. The bigger the bridal party, usually, and this was just kind of a correlation, so not causation, so let's not, let's not draw any hard and fast rules here, but usually the bigger the bridal party, the less fun we had. And the smaller the bridal party, in fact, when there was no bridal party, if it were an elopement, or if it was just a really small, intimate group of people, we actually enjoyed those the most. And so it just seemed like a really simple solution. Stop showing weddings that have huge bridal parties and exclusively show weddings that have smaller ones or don't have any at all, or create edits at big weddings that don't show the bigger bridal party for our own portfolio purposes. And what that ended up doing was attracting people who were having elopements, people who were having destination weddings that were going to be small, and more intimate experiences. And when we didn't have enough of those to show, to have a really full portfolio, to be able to say, look at all this experience we had, we cut our losses basically and just said, let's show quality over quantity, even if it's one wedding, one commercial piece. I would rather see filmmakers show one thing that sells the right service, that attracts the right audience, than show 2, 3, 15, 400 pieces that are going to lead to projects that are either rife with revision requests or just not aligned from the get-go, which actually are symptoms of each other. Yeah.
Yes. I have a lot of work to do when we get off this episode. Hey, I'll be right back with my interview with Amina Moreau right after this. Hey, if you want to make more money in your video business, you got to work smarter, not harder. And as I've learned that, I have come full circle in how I view stock footage. Stock footage used to be the worst, literally the worst. Terrible quality and super small selection. There have been so many projects where we just needed one shot of something pretty specific that we didn't get for whatever reason, or the client just requested totally last minute. I'm sure that's never happened to you, right? Well, someone turned us on to Storyblocks years ago, and it has really added to our edits without breaking the bank and without compromising the quality of the production. They have an enormous library of stock footage, and with the unlimited video plan, you get access to everything, including HD and 4K footage, After Effects templates, motion backgrounds, and more. We have saved our clients and ourselves a ton of money, and we saved a couple of projects that needed that one special shot. Use your content anywhere you like, including YouTube. All content is royalty-free, so you can use it for commercial and personal projects. And new content is added regularly, so there's always something fresh to download. Head over to storyblocks.com/Studio Sherpas to get all the stock footage, audio, and images you need.
You know what? I mean, I'm also the plumber with leaky pipes.
Yeah.
I will admit that too, because it is harder to tell your own story. And so if you go to Stillmotion's website, at this right now, we do talk more about the what than about the personal. Yeah. Now, if you go to my newest brand, which is Sway Storytelling, which is more on the consulting side, like the work that I did with that dentist, that has a personal story, and it links it back to Stillmotion, because I really wanted to lead with the idea that the more personal you are, the more emotion-driven a story is, the more intellectual impact you can make with changing people's minds about something, getting people to buy a product, changing the way they vote, whatever your initiative is. But Stillmotion's website could use some work. And I think that's partly also because Stillmotion has evolved quite a bit over the years and is in a very different place now than it was 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. And it's a matter of keeping up with those changes. And like you said earlier, we change as individuals, and sometimes we have to ask those questions of ourselves. Who am I? How do I want to be in this world? We have to ask ourselves those semi-regularly, because we change, we evolve.
Yeah, I love that.
It's exciting.
So, the thing that I love about Stillmotion, I mean, I don't know if you even remember this, but I shot a wedding with you guys in Columbus. That was the first time that I had met you. And this was probably in like
I want to say 2007 or so.
Yeah, probably
7, 6 or
2007,
7.
maybe
Yes.
8 at the latest. But
Wow.
there are so many people that are a part of the Studio Sherpas community that have heard of and or have known or taken workshops with Stillmotion. And so you guys really you built a brand that was so cutting edge, I think, for that time, like early on in the DSLR revolution phase, and just innovate movement, just all that fun stuff that we like to smile brevis, right?
Yeah, goodness.
Yeah.
That was a really interesting time.
It was an interesting time. But my point being, you guys were pioneers in a lot of senses, and the way that you gave back into the community, the way that you poured into the community, it's part of the reason why I even do this show today and do Studio Sherpas, is because I felt like as I watched, as I learned from you guys, I was like, man, like that would be a dream to be able to, if I could help others do this. And here I am all these years later. I was like, more than a decade later, I'm like, man, I feel like I was inspired to do that so long ago because of what I had received, and to be able to give back, it's a huge gift. So thank you for what you've done. And I'm just so curious, to think about the evolution of Stillmotion. You brought it up. Like, what is your heartbeat today? Like, what's the direction? Where are you guys evolving, and what's happening?
Well, I really appreciate what you said about the inspiration. One of the this is an answer to your question. It's going to sound like a tangent, but I'll bring it back around.
As long as you're not going to ask me a question to make me talk.
No, not yet anyway. But one of the things that I struggle with the most in my career, and therefore I think as a person, because I have that work-life balance is a bit of a blur, partly because I love what I do so much. But one of my biggest challenges is that I feel like the impact I can make in the world in my lifetime is too small. And because the world kind of needs a little more fixing than I can do by myself. And some days that's inspiring, and some days it's really heavy because it makes me feel like I'm not enough. And one of the reasons why I believe so much in storytelling is that I think it's one of the most powerful vehicles for social change. I think that we can really make a difference as storytellers in the issues that we care about. But back to my challenge, there are only so many meaningful stories that I can tell in my lifetime. Same with you, same as everybody else that's taking part in this podcast today. And that hurts sometimes, that our impact is limited. And so I've been struggling with that and trying to figure out the best way to maximize the impact that I can have in my life and in my career. And one of the answers that I have found is helping others, but not just helping them tell stories, which certainly does expand the impact beyond just the stories I can tell, right? Because if you can tell stronger stories, well, that's 2 now. And then if someone else that I've touched maybe can tell more impactful stories, well, that's 3 now. But that's additive. Whereas if my team and I inspire you to not just tell more powerful stories, but go out and empower others, which is what you're doing, that impact becomes exponential. Because then if you empower those people to go empower others, not just tell better stories, but empower others to do that too, then our collective impact can be huge. I mean, it's just math. And so I really have to thank you, because what you're doing is, I mean, this is going to sound like really dramatic here, but what you're doing gives my life meaning. And that is the direction that I'm going with Stillmotion, with Muse, with Sway Storytelling, is helping people realize their potential, find fulfillment in what they do personally and professionally, and make a positive difference in the world. And whether that's through film, through writing, through consulting, it doesn't matter, because it's all just storytelling. Having a conversation, what we're doing right now, it's storytelling. It's everywhere, and it's in every industry. And so I think the opportunities are limitless.
That's awesome. I love that. And you're welcome.
And you're welcome too.
That's one of my favorite bits of I don't know, tidbit that somebody shared a long time ago. It's like, hey, you're not, enough of this like false humility stuff. Don't be like, somebody says, hey, thanks for sharing that or whatever. Don't say like, oh no, it's not, it's like, just say thanks. Hey,
yeah,
you're welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, I love that. I love that idea of just knowing that we all have a voice, and knowing that there is always something against us. There's always this thing that says we don't have what it takes, we're not enough, what we have to say doesn't matter. And that's really, I mean, that's a lot of that is my heartbeat too, is just to say like, hey, you need to be aware that those are lies, and we all have a story that and our stories aren't for just us. It's like our stories should always be on the way to somebody else, right? And because there's somebody that needs to know that somebody else has gone through something like you, or somebody that just needs inspiration, encouragement, or challenge to say like, hey, like, here's something that I've gone through. Maybe at least consider my story, and like
Right.
what I learned from that. So to ever think that, and we get in creative ruts, and we get, just like want to bang our head against the keyboard or whatever, because we don't feel creative. It's like, man, when we talk to our friends that aren't doing video or aren't telling stories, they look at what we're doing, no matter how crappily or how greatly, and they're just like, dude, it's like you have the coolest job. And it could be on your worst day where you're just like, I'm just terrible, I can't do this. Why is anybody even paying me to do any of this? And then you realize, hopefully you realize, that there's so many people that would love to have the skills, the gifts that you have. Even on your worst day, they would like pay lots and lots of money to have that themselves. So just an encouragement for, if you're listening and you're just like, man, I am in that spot where I just don't feel like I have it anymore, or I'm not even sure I ever had it. Go outside, go for a walk, do something to get your mind out of that dark place. That hopefully that that place pushes you to realize, no, I guess. And the only way that you can figure out if you do have something to offer is to actually offer it. So stop like, I want to perfect it. I'm still working on it. Whether it's a film or it's like, just a message, a story inside of you, get it out there so that people can shut it down, or people can say like, oh my gosh, it took 100 people before I finally found somebody that this resonated, or that this was for. I'm going to stop preaching. Take it
But
through.
I think that it needed to be said. And I think that anybody who's struggling with a little bit of that imposter syndrome, or whatever, what self-doubt, that little voice, know that I think everybody has that. Everybody does. And maybe not always, but at some point in their lives, it creeps in. Everybody, the most successful, the most renowned, the most, all of it. And I think one of the tricks to overcoming it, aside from what you said about putting the work out there, and I mean, I'm a tennis player, so we've got this saying, and I think it's in all sports. It'll sound familiar, that sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. And if you take that mentality, that if something is a flop, it's an opportunity to push forward and get better. It's not a punishment. It's not evidence that you're just not good enough. It's evidence that you've got work to do. But I think the biggest actual trick to overcoming those feelings of inadequacy that I think we all sometimes have is to just look at the precedent that you have created over the course of your career and over your life. and actually do a tally. Make a spreadsheet. How many failures have you had? How many successes have you had? And count them all, including like getting up and brushing your teeth in the morning and making a great breakfast and feeling great. You know, that can be a success. But however you measure success and failure, be consistent about it and actually have a tally, a mental one or an actual concrete one. And time again, I can nearly promise you that the wins are going to outweigh the losses. And that's how you build confidence. But you also have to be prepared to see the wins when they come. And I think some people are predisposed to see negatives more than positives, and some people are predisposed to see positives more than negatives. And if you actually look at those concretely, you'll be able to put yourself in one of those categories and actually evaluate for yourself. Do I see things more positively or more negatively? Do I see what other people would consider a win? Do I see that do I actually see that as a win? Do I celebrate it? Or do I think, oh, that just happened to me, I got lucky, and give the credit to some other external thing? And so I think we need to internalize both. Take credit for the wins, take credit for the losses, but credit them with the learning that will push you forward, and always be looking ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. That's really good. Those are not on my list of like notes or bullets or any of that stuff. You know, I think too, like just to go even further, I think if we can change our mind, you know, if you're frustrated with the work that you're putting out, or, you know, like as you're talking, I'm like, oh gosh, I'm making a little list here of stuff. I got to take some videos off our site. I need to tweak our bios. You know, that can just feel deflating, because guess what? This is not the first time where I've made those same exact notes, but I just made them again. But if you can change your mind and just say, my job, if my job in being a creative, you know, doing this business, if my purpose is to just make me happy, if it's for me, then it's easy to kind of get in a spot of like feeling like, oh gosh, this isn't good, you know. But when you change your mind and say, like, I'm here to like help people, I'm here to help tell their stories, help figure out like what their problem is, and help come up with a solution, I'm here to serve them. Like when you can think like that, then it's like, I might be in a rut, but man, like if my goal is to help somebody, that's just it is a completely different place. And for me, it's like way more motivating. Although there are plenty of times where I just forget, and I'm like, well, I'm trying to do this thing, and I realize later, I'm like, I'm doing this thing for my own like glory, or my own like, you know, I want more notches in my belt to just say like I did this thing or I did that. It's like
Right.
when it's that, then I get like, oh man, I'm not there yet. I don't have all the Emmys that Amina has, or I don't have as many followers as Parker Walbeck, or, you know, whatever the thing is. But it's like, wait, if I have 0 of those, but I've helped one person, 2, you know, 20, 50, whatever, then I'm like, oh my gosh, that is fulfilling. It's not the same as Amina, and it's not the same as Parker. It's different. It's me. I'm doing my thing. This is good. And you know, there are things that I can tweak and learn and grow and do, but to just realize like, hey, this is good, and to not beat myself down, and also not to slow down your launch, or you putting out your story. I just think about, you know, Studio Sherpas. I wanted to be doing this stuff forever ago. I wanted to be helping filmmakers. I wanted to be helping people that run a better business. But I didn't, because I'm like, there are so many other people out there doing this kind of stuff. I am like down here compared to all. But then I realize, I'm like, I'm never going to get to that spot where I feel like, okay, now I've finally got it. I realize that I'm never going to be in a spot in my personal life where everything's perfect. Okay, everything's perfect. Now we can have kids. Now we can buy a house. Now we can, there is never a perfect time for any of that stuff. So stop. Man, I am just preaching. Like, I'm gonna stop again.
But, you know, I think it's so great though that, you know, you're able to see that, and the fact that, you know, you're not me and you're not anyone else. That's the point, that as creatives, we are all different. and we might have the same tools. And I think what's so interesting about 2008, when we first started kind of collaborating, was with the invention of the release of the 5D Mark II, all of a sudden, all of this gear that produced beautiful imagery, it was super accessible.
Right.
And in some ways, that was the great equalizer. It made filmmaking more accessible to people of all types. And in some ways, that really accelerated the industry. But now everybody could make a pretty picture. That was a lot less difficult, and the barrier to entry was much smaller. And so I think since then, things have become even more accessible, which I think makes it that much more important for us to be able to differentiate in other ways. It's not just about creating pretty pictures anymore. And at one point, that's totally what Stillmotion was all about. It was, how can we innovate? How can we be the coolest? Bringing Steadicams to weddings? Done. We're gonna do all of this crazy, outrageous stuff and see if we can push the limits and make the prettiest picture we possibly can. But that gets old.
Yeah.
And back then we could differentiate that way. Mm-hmm. Now you can't.
Yep.
At least it's very difficult to. Okay. Now it comes down to who's a better storyteller and who is most unique in their presentation, which is an extension of storytelling.
Yeah. Oh man, I love that. So good. So good. This is amazing. Like, if you saw my list of notes, things that I kind of fall back on and things, before, I'm like, we did not go anywhere. And I thought, I'm so happy that we didn't, because this was much better. How can people follow you? What's the best place for them to keep in touch and kind of just see what you got going on?
Well, we've got the typical social media channels, Facebook, Twitter. I have a personal Instagram, but that's mostly tennis related. But, at Stillmotion, at Amina Moreau, Muse Storytelling is offering online courses for storytelling for filmmakers, fantastic resources. On the consulting side, swaystorytelling.com is partnering with filmmakers and entrepreneurs of all types to help tell their stories more strongly, more powerfully. It's been a fun journey, and certainly creating a community and fostering a community along the way has been very fulfilling. So I certainly hope that we can all keep in touch and keep growing together.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I just love what you're doing. I love your heart and love just what I said. I could probably just say in that sense there. I just thank you so much for sharing and putting yourself out there and doing something that I feel like a lot of people they miss out on. And I love your example of just saying, like, I've got something to offer, and I want to help impact the world, even if it's not at the global level, which I would love for it to be, but to just know that there is power in your voice, there's power in your story. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. I told you it was going to be good. You can get all of the notes, the Cliff's notes, the links, all that stuff, the show notes from this podcast if you go to studiosherpas.com/144. We've got it all laid out there nice and pretty for you to just remember the good stuff and get access to the stuff that we talked about. If you are stuck or frustrated inside of your own video business, or you're just ready to take things to the next level, I want to invite you to my free workshop where I'm going to be teaching you what you should be doing right now to book more high-paying video production clients, even if you hate sales. You can sign up at studiosherpas.com/workshop, and I look forward to seeing you there. And let me know what you want to hear on this show. Shoot me a DM and let me know what topics or guests we should have on the show. And if you're not sure, think about your own business. Think about an area that you're struggling, that you want help in, and that's the thing that you should say, hey, Ryan, let's talk about this. So hit me up. Take care, my friend. I appreciate you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Till then, climb on. Peace out. See ya.